Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boy.
Welcome to Tormenting Voice for Harry and Isaac. This is a Magic the Gathering podcast coming to you from Yorkshire in the UK.
In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things competitive Magic, discuss our approach to the game, and give our opinions on all aspects of it.
We're going to do metagame analysis, data-driven tier lists, and our own personal hot takes on all of the above.
We're going to do deep dives on specific formats, archetypes, and decks. We're going to try and improve our play alongside yours, and most importantly, we're trying to grow the community of the game that we love.
Alright, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Tormenting Voice podcast. Today's episode is much like the first one, except this time around we're doing a top 10 best/favourite cards from the Eldraine Era of Standard. So Harry's going to briefly explain the methodology again if you didn't watch the last episode, and then we're going to get straight into it.
Yeah, so like Isaac said, it is on the last episode as well. Same methodology. If something's ranked first by one of the 8 sample, then it's assigned 10 points. Second place is assigned 9 points. Third place assigned 8, etc. And then I totaled them and gave them a total score, and whichever was at the top was obviously ranked first. Hopefully this sort of evened it out, but just to clarify for that there is a lot bigger range for this. So we had 41 unique cards from 8 people. So it's very clear that the diversity in this is much higher. But yeah, it's exactly the same techniques. But yeah, I'll start at number 10. We have had a couple of tie breaks that we've had to decide amongst ourselves. So there are some things that are on the same points, but between us, we've just had a small discussion about it and sort of leveled them out. So at number 10 for the best cards in Eldraine Standard, the format, we've gone with Light Up the Stage.
Yep, so Light Up the Stage, it's a card from Ravnica Allegiances. So it's sorcery. It's red into generic, and it has Spectacle for 1 red. And Spectacle was the Rakdos mechanic from that set. And Spectacle is you may cast this spell for its Spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. And its effect is exile top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So obviously for this card, it's slotted right into red decks, because obviously the aim of the game with red decks is to make your opponents lose life. And this, for 1 red, getting 2 cards advantages for reds is, it's insane. And also it's play as well, so you can play lands, which again, more insane because it allows you to play the lands that you play, and then obviously just get more and more advantage. And then if you Spectacle into another Light Up the Stage, you can then play it again. You can play that for its Spectacle cost. So yeah, so a really insane card. And in the decks that it went in with Steamkin, you just got your Steamkin to 4 counters, no bother, and just popped off from there.
Yeah, this card, I think it's done in a good way for red. That it's you are getting some kind of advantage, obviously, and it's cheap, and it's costed in a way that you can combo off with it, like we were able to see on Steamkin and Frenzy and stuff. But it was also done in a manner that if you didn't capitalize on the advantage, then it went away. And that's how red should be.
Mm-hmm.
It fits the archetype really well, and it played really well. And as you were playing it, you did feel like the pressure to actually prioritize those cards rather than the cards that are in your library or in your hand. So it forced a play style. It did feel good. It felt good to play it, but it also forced you into a certain mindset and certain way of playing. And I like the card because of that. Some people thought that the effect was a little bit pushed, which I can sort of see. But I think the trade-offs that you get
Yeah,
it's sort of like it's a really powerful effect, but it's tailed by a lot of things, like the fact that if you can whiff on it, you can get 2 expensive cards. Like it was in a deck with Anax at one point, I think, wasn't it? If you get like 2 cards you can't play. Mainly as well, you could play around it like you knew it would come in, because when you play mono red, you know you're playing mono red. So when you attack with a 1/1, you're like, well, I'm going to block anyway.
Yeah.
Just to stop them like the staging. Yeah, I don't know, people probably got feel bad from it, but it's a lot more fair than it appears. It's like, it's just red divination, and it's divination, but it's red, so it's impulsive draw, not draw.
Yeah.
And then spectacle, because it has to be good, unlike divination.
Yeah,
like,
and I think the card's very well designed. It's unoffensive, so I think when it is cast for 1 mana and it's cast in like the mid game, people think it's insane, and it is insane in that situation. But to be able to build a board to a scenario where you have a clean attack, you're not sacrificing anything to get the 2 cards, and then the 2 cards pull you further ahead. I think it's very skill testing as well, because you'd see people cast it on turn 2 to like hit a land drop or something, and it's like, yeah, but you probably shouldn't be doing that. Like there are certain times where people cast it very early just to cast something, and it's like you're better off holding that card. So I think it's very skill testing, and the fact that it made you build your deck in a specific way, like I was going to say that if you ever cast it for 3 mana, you're not winning that game. Like, and only very few niche decks played it. It's like mono red played it, and maybe a few red black aggressive decks, but not many of them. So it was like a format staple, but it was in one deck. So it was like the glue that held that sort of archetype together for a while.
Yeah, it was a bit of a, like, it just kind of got you over the hump sometimes. In it was also, it was a combo piece. Let's not like diminish the upper end of it. Like it absolutely is a combo piece. Like it allowed you to go off with Frenzy and Steamkin. Like it was an enabler for that, but it also made the deck like run smoothly. Like there are times where you're going, like Isaac said, turn 2 playing it, or I've played it turn 2 off of like 1 land. I might have a land in hand, but I'm looking for others off the top of my deck.
Yeah.
Like on that spectacle, because you're just trying to smooth out your curve for the latter turns, and it's, I don't know. I think the card is well designed, plays well, forces a play style, and that for me checks all the right boxes.
Yeah, I think it fits perfectly in this list as well, because obviously I think the reason we saw the big diversity of cards is best is kind of more subjective than worst in this era of Magic. Like there are some cards that are objectively bad, but objectively good, it could mean power level, and we've seen a lot of very good cards which went on the bad list, but then it's also how well designed they are, how fun they are to play. I just think Light Up the Stage sort of wins on all those categories really, so I think it's a really good number 10.
Yeah, sweet. So I think we've said everything we want to say on that.
Yeah.
And then number 9 on the best, we've got. I'll just clarify. So Light Up the Stage appeared only twice in that entire group. But it was placed quite highly. Like it got 7.5. So the people who rated the card, like really, really rated it. So it got 15 overall points, but only came up twice. But yeah, so at number 9, we've got Knight of the Even Legion.
So Knight of the Even Legion. So he's a 1 black, 1 drop. So he's a creature, vampire knight, and he has an ability for 1 black and 2 generic. Knight of the Even Legion gets +3/+3 and gains death touch land of turn. At the beginning of your end step, if the player lost 4 or more life this turn, put 1 counter on Knight of the Even Legion.
Yeah, so
what is he base? A 1/2?
Yes, a 1/2.
He's a 1/2 as well. Yeah. Sorry.
So as a person that's probably cast the most Knight of the Even Legions amongst us in Pioneer and in Standard in the red black deck, I think this card is like, I think it's sort of the last of the Figure of Destinies, if that makes sense. So we've seen cards like it in the past where it's a 1-mana creature, an expensive activate ability, and some kind of other passive bonus. Like you've seen Figure of Destiny, we've seen like Ascendant Spirit in Kaldheim, and we saw Warden of the First Tree. This one sort of enabled a lot of the decks. So there was a Knights deck for a while that needed 1 drops, and it had obvious Fervent Champion, and this just sort of bound it together. There was a Vampires deck that it played really well in. And like I said, I've cast it in Pioneer. Like it's obviously a very powerful card that holds up to those standards. So the fact that it's there, it grows, it's sort of like a Tarmogoyf-esque creature in the mid game, and it has this activated ability to just always be relevant and always threaten activation to be a punch through. It's just a very good card that demands an answer.
Yeah, I think being able to sort of play such a big mid to late game threat on turn one is pretty strong. I don't think it's too pushed just purely off the stat line. Like the stat line could be flipped and it'd be a 2-1 and it'd be pretty like that would make it
insane.
Worse in my opinion. Like that would be a design flaw. Like the way that it is, it can usually trade up with. Sorry, it doesn't trade off with most other 1-drops, so that's good. And the ability is really strong. It allows you to push through, like Isaac said, and it can really swing like board states. But yeah, I like the card. I think it's good. It's fun to play with. It's nice to have good 1-drops. Like the game needs to have good 1-drops. Like if you don't have good 1-drops, then you end up in this scenario where aggro just kind of flops.
Absolutely.
And nobody wants to be there, I don't think, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fairly sure I'm not a fan. You've made some very salient points there. Just started to sway me a bit. It's just a bit good, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's close. Like if it were 3 mana for +2/+2 and Death Touch to end a turn, I don't know. Too pushed in my opinion, but.
Yeah, I get that. I think if we didn't give Death Touch, I think that'd be the best thing because when you attack an Ebon Legion in 3 mana up, right? And you have creatures on the other side of the board, that's like an impossible puzzle to solve because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Do you know what I mean? If you're tapped out on blockers, if you're in a green deck, if you block with your big creature and you trade for a Knight of the Ebon Legion, they're happy with that. If you don't block and it hits you and it gets bigger, then the next turn your problem's worse because now you're probably not trading with it. So I do get that it's very snowbally. Like if
the multiples thing as well, it's a problem when you have like 2 on the board and then you get 3 mana and one of them swings and it's like can't block that, but then the other one's going to be sat defending. So you get this. But duality when they're in multiples, right?
But I do agree with Harry that in general, I personally believe the game is better when the 1-drops are good. Like we've seen it with like Elvish Mystic. I didn't print Elvish Mystic for the longest time, and now it's like if there was a focal point like that in Standard, like I can't remember what card it was, but there was a specific 1-drop. It might have even been Gillig or something like that. But I said if this card gets too good, Standard will be in a good place because everyone will have to play like Bloodchief's Thirst and Shocks, and people will be forced to put these cards in the deck. So whilst I agree, like it's probably too pushed when you like try to make green decks a thing. At the same time, it's like if those 1-drops don't exist, then the whole aggro section of what the metagame could be, it's just totally gone.
Yeah, I think the way to go with 1-drops though is like rather than really good ones, is just access to a profusion of all right ones. Like there were a white deck that creeped up the one that just splashed blue for Fairy Time Raveler, and that just it was just like 16 1-drops. Same with Mono White Humans in Innistrad. None of them were super powerful, but you got away with it just because there were enough of them, and it sort of makes 1-drops more of a deck building choice. Just then, obviously it's really shaky ground because they've got to be good enough to be playable, but they can't be too good because they cost 1 mana. Like
I think you make a good point there, and like I think this is a bit of a good segue for the whole venerated Loxodon shout out. Like the reason that white deck was so good is because it had like a viable top end that it could play like turn 3 or whatever, and it was really powerful. Like you pumped everything, and I think you're right in that if we lowered like the cap, if you lower the top level of the 1-drops and increase the bottom.
Yeah, make
level,
more
then,
of them. So there's a higher density.
Make more.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit of a problem Mono Red has at the moment. You'll probably notice you just short like one of a good 1-drop. Like it'd be really nice if there was just like a 1 red 2/1. Like it'd just be enough to sort of push it over. But
absolutely, like the right now the mono red deck is essentially the perfect example. Like you've got a couple of options, but none of them are really playable. Like Fervent Champion is the best one, and even that is
Poor.
a fucking. I mean,
Yeah,
Fervent
poor.
Champion's got a whole thing around it that it's like either really, really good or really, really bad, and that's it. So
Yeah, it'd be the same if there was a 1 red for a 2/1 knight. It'd be amazing because obviously then it works with Fervent Champion as well. But yeah, just a bit. I think large volumes of mediocre ones.
I think that's probably the way to go.
No one played that as well. That era standard perfectly illustrates what we're talking about, because that mono white deck, like me and Tom played it a lot. Because and me and Tom are both aware that Kithian's not a dragon. That's how much you played it.
You had Kithian, you had Dragon Hunter. What was the other? I'm sure there was another one.
There was Town Gossip Monger. And
yes.
And if you wanted Expedition Envoy, you could have Expedition Envoy.
Expedition
Envoy. You had 16 2, and they were all, when it came down to it, roughly 1 mana 2/1s, and there was the identity of them.
I had a game of that deck where I kept a 1-land hand and didn't draw any land all game, and I won on turn 10 by putting a Griff Spoon on a Gideon. Beautiful.
Sounds about right, to be fair. Like, but yet, like, I don't know, Ryan, have you got any strong opinions on 1-drops in general? Because I know, like, you like to play aggressive decks.
Yeah, no. Just to put up on like what Tom said, obviously the thing about making it too good, because, and it's like as what Harry said as well, like it's put it on the board and you have to answer it because this card, because it can take you all the way. Because that's the thing, like you play into 1, and when you get to 3 mana, that's it. Like you can take it all. Because there was a Japanese player who I forgot what Tom it was. It wasn't too long ago, but basically just played a Knight of the Evil Legion, and what is the guy? These opponent answered these other threats, but this Knight of the Evil Legion just took him all the way, and he just didn't play anything and just kept pumping it every turn.
Yeah,
because the thing about it is with the Knight is that it's not bad in the late game either. Because if you draw it, like you think, 1-drop, it's useless like turn 7, but also you drop it, you've got 6 mana then, and it's all of a sudden a 6/7, and then it just keeps growing as well. And the thing about it though, with the ability, it's if a player lost 4 life, so you can lose life yourself. So you can shock in and do damage to yourself, and then if you need to get the counter, obviously to get out of shock range, you can do that as well, which is a thing to know as well. So because it's come up with Death Shadow recently being into historic, because people have been like shocking themselves and then using Thoughtseize and then to do obviously get the damage, and then obviously it's just a natural fit into them because obviously you're losing life to turn. Obviously it's growing the Knight of the Evil Legion, and then all of a sudden you've got this massive 1-drop as well, and they've got Death Shadow as well. So it's like, for standard here, it was a good aggressive 1-drop, but it could be good. Like it could be too good at sometimes, but other times it couldn't be. Because he said, well, if you swing in, obviously then you've got the door block. If I block, then he's going to pump it, but then you've got the other side of it. Like if I block, then they have to pump it, and that wastes the turn.
Yeah.
And then so there is that other side of it. Whereas if you don't, then obviously then you're allowed to get through and then play another 3, a 3-drop free. Usually in that deck, it was usually like Spawn of Mayhem. And and usually I'd probably rather deal with a Knight than a Spawn of Mayhem.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that's an interesting point. Like, as hard as it is for your opponent, it also creates like a lot of interesting decisions, because ultimately, whatever you do with Knight of the Ebon Legion, that decision matters. Like, if it lives past turn 1, like even in mirror matches, it's like, do you play your Knight or do you answer theirs? Like, there's a lot of things like that where. And I think whilst it could be too good, I don't think it was, other than maybe in the Vampires deck. And I think it did create a lot of interesting gameplay. But the downside is obviously a bit snowbally.
I think this card specifically sort of highlights where they've been going wrong with like the tribal stuff as well. Like they'll put these weird double tribals on cards, like Vampire Knight. And then there'll be other cards like dwarves that we're seeing now that have got like they haven't even got enough for a full tribal.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of like try and balance it out a little bit, like push it over the set. And in this sort of plays into what we were talking about. If we lower the overall power of the top 5 1-drops or top 2 1-drops, whatever, and we increase the bottom bracket, then maybe we can spread across these creature types as well, and maybe get like tribals to actually become a thing rather than just playing good stuff piles.
yeah, it's like you were saying in Kaldheim with dwarves sort of having a bit of support but not being all the way there, and then that legend, the Blood Sky Herald or whatever, the one that boasts to demonic shooter or vampiric shooter, whichever shooter. It's a rogue. It's like a big demon running at a bunch of people with a massive axe, but it's inexplicably a rogue because they just can't stop like making everything a rogue for rogue to be like the one tribal deck that you can run.
Yeah. I don't think I said, but he is from Core Set 2020 as well. Just in case. Yeah.
Overall, I think this card's like relatively balanced. Like he does cause some difficult play patterns, but like Isaac said, there's interesting decisions that come with it. And yes, it's a 1-drop that can finish the game, but it was. You
have to put the work in for it to finish. It doesn't just finish the game. That's where its ceiling is rather than its floor.
There's an investment as well. Like it's not free to make it do this. So
plus it leaves you open to like instant speed removal as well. If you engineer a situation where they want to pump and then you shock in response, it's like you've just time walked them. So
so like a conviction.
Well, I mean, okay. So I think we're a bit of a mixed bag on Night of the Even Legion, but I think have we said everything we want to say on it?
Yeah, I think Nine feels right for the discussion we had because obviously we said a very good card, lots of decisions, but also the downside of it being a bit snowbally and ruining some percentage of games. So I think 9 is probably a good place to put it.
Yep. So just to clarify, it appeared 3 times and like had a total pointage of 15. So it got an average of 5. So it was, people rate the card, but not very highly, essentially. And well, no, that's the wrong way to say it. The people that rated the card put it in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
So at number 8. Love this card, Midnight Reaper.
Midnight Reaper.
I don't know. I'm gonna. Look, I mean, go on, Ryan.
Yeah. So Midnight Reaper. So he's a 3 mana. So he's black and 2 generic. He's a creature zombie knight from Guilds of Ravnica. So the first Ravnica set. And so he's whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card, and he's a 3/2 as well.
Harry?
So, Harry.
I just
give it to him. He's ridiculous.
I just feel like this card is what a black 3-drop should be. Like maybe it's a bit pushed with the double tribal thing that I was just speaking about, but like other than that, I think it does everything else that a black 3-drop should do. Like it's slightly more aggressively statted than some of the like what you'd expect in any color other than like blue and white. But it also provides like this aristocrats theme, but it dies easily. It doesn't do anything major when it comes into the battlefield, but it allows you to sort of generate quite a lot of advantage. It causes problems for the other player, but it's not broken. It's just, I think this is where, like if the power levels for rares at 3 mana were at Midnight Reaper, we would be in a really good spot.
Agreed.
I think. And whenever I've played with Midnight Reaper, it feels good to play, and it's like when you're facing across a Midnight Reaper and you're looking at it, it's not the end of the world. It's a problem that you have to deal with, but it causes like actual decisions to be made and play styles come into it, and it's just a good card. It's well designed.
Yeah, it's not a Mayhem Devil. I mean, that's ultimately. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially in the mirror match, you would much rather than play a Midnight Reaper than a Mayhem Devil, and I think that sort of speaks volumes. What do you think?
If it was, I would say if it was printed as Mayhem Devil, it'd read whenever a creature is put into a graveyard, draw a card. Wouldn't it? Like, that's the problem with Mayhem Devil is it just triggers on everything. It's like your opponent cracks a fetch, I'll kill you 1/1. Like, oh yeah, should have done that. So I'll be short of this one. My only nitpick would be with it, I'd put the word another on it. But that's just me being nitpicky because it's a.
I can see that.
That if you spend a removal spell to kill it, they draw a card, and it's like, it has to die, but it's not worth killing. But
Yeah, that was going to be my point, because usually with these type of effects, it's usually has the another attached to it. So I think we have seen it recently with the Berserker that's been printed in Kaldheim, the 2-drop, which is a 3/1, where if another L4 Berserker dies, then it does that effect. So I think Wizards have been trying to toy with the idea, trying to get it right under the balance between it, where it's, should it include itself or should it just be for others? And with that, they kind of like, all right, we'll make it a 2-drop, but we'll make it a 3/1. So it's kind of like, so to kind of give you a bit of advantage, but to offset that, like the toughness. But then with this one, as you said, Tom, obviously it's because obviously if you kill it, it replaces itself, which is good. But as you said, it's kind of like, I think, well, I can just leave it for now. Like, I don't want to give him a card. It's only a 3/2. So you kind of just think like, oh, I'm going to have a 3. It gives your opponent a 3/2, but also like your opponent, like maybe like, I won't bother dealing with it. So you kind of just make that scenario. It's kind of like, do I do it or do I not? Also, the thing to notice that this is usually the classic thing with black card draw, isn't it? Where it's you lose life for the card advantage. So that fits in with the theme of black and as well really well. Also, the thing to note is that you can die from it, because there has been loads of examples where people have been killed because of the effects, where your opponent's just board cleared, and obviously all the triggers just do it, especially if you get 2 down. Where
that's the thing, when people accidentally play the second one or play the second one without realizing, and you just wrath them, they die because they've got like 4 creatures, you've got 2 Midnight Reapers and 2 other creatures out, and you're like, all right, I guess dome you for 8.
And your opponent just takes advantage of that by just leaving the Midnight Reapers and just killing all the rest of the creatures.
Yeah, I think what I will say on this, maybe why I don't rate it so highly, and this is a controversial statement, and we will probably have a debate about this in a later episode, but I think Magic now, in Standard especially this era of Standard, is not all defined by card advantage. So the reason it wasn't in the top 10 most broken cards is because the cards you get now do not matter. We will go into that in more detail, but ultimately for me, I don't think I put this card on my list just because usually I didn't cast a lot of Midnight Reapers, full transparency. I thought it was okay. I think when it was first seen play, like with the Ixalan cards, which we aren't really discussing right now, it was just like a generic 3-drop in mid-range deck because it was just good enough. But in this post-Eldraine era, it was just okay, because if your opponent killed it, their removal spell also drew him a card because it's a Bone Crusher Giant. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything's a 2-for-1, so nothing's a 2-for-1 anymore. So that's why personally I don't probably rate it as highly in terms of how powerful it was. I think it's a well-designed card, but in general I was always a little bit unimpressed with it.
The other thing to note with because it became a really good engine with Cat Oven, because the cat negated the life loss and also just constantly drawing a new card every turn.
Yeah. I think that is the problem with the. That's the problem with the cat, not the.
As I said, it's like it was good, but then it became part of this, part of this engine, which was just like so much. Yeah.
I think what I wanted to say just on the point there, like it replaces itself and stuff. I don't think that we need to be really stringent with that effect. Like if it is on a creature like that, take what Isaac just said. When it wasn't being played in a full-on aristocrats list, its effect just made it kind of good enough for mid-range, but that's it. It wasn't like gonna ever be massively broken because it replaced itself. Like I think it having like another, because this card could have gone a lot further. It could have been whenever a creature dies.
Yeah, it's ridiculous for saying that, but that's so true. It could have easily been that.
This card could be like way more pushed than it is, and I think it's at a nice sort of balanced ground where non-token. It may replace itself, but like I don't know. This is just my opinion. I enjoyed playing with it, and I never felt like it was too much. It was too oppressive at any point. Like I felt like it was all in the decks that it was played in. It sort of did its job.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll move on from Midnight Reaper. But like that was 8th and it had 6 points, but it only appeared twice. So the 2 people that put it in had it at like 3rd essentially.
Yeah.
Because they both had it, and probably Probably me.
It was me. I put it as my number one.
Yeah, these are two people that I called out as being Midnight Reaper players.
Okay. Well, there you go. So at number 7, I'm kind of shocked about this one, but at number 7 we've got Bone Crusher Giant.
Shocked about it. Oh, I get
Yeah, right. I'll let you read that one, and then I'm sure me and Tom both have angry rants about this card, and to a lesser extent Harry and probably Ryan.
Bone Crusher Giant's everyone's favourite staple card of the format, from everyone's favourite set, Eldraine. So Bone Crusher Giant, so he's a 3 mana, so he's a red and 2 generic for a giant, and he has the adventure mechanic. So adventure is, so you may cast the card. So adventure is usually an instant or sorcery, so you can cast that if it's in your hand for that cost, and then it goes on an adventure, which essentially means it's on exile, and then you can cast the creature half of it later. So his adventure is Stomp, which is red and 1 instant. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. And then Bone Crusher himself is a 4/3, and he has an ability. Whenever Bone Crusher Giant becomes a target of a spell, Bone Crusher Giant deals 2 damage to that spell's controller.
Right. So what I'll say first is I won't go. But let's try and not spend an hour on this, because I think we could. I'm not exaggerating. Between us, we could easily do 4 hours on adventure. We could easily do at least 2 on Bone Crusher Giant itself. So I think personally, what I'll say is, before we jump into it, I think the reason it was placed so highly is that when people played it, it was a very good card, and ultimately it meant that people were playing some form of removal, which for a while was a bit of a novelty. So I think that personally, that's how I interpreted the data, that people that placed it enjoyed playing with it, and that's why they put it in there, rather than people like the card and think it's good for Magic. Anyway, Tom?
Well, I'm going to open with, I'm fairly sure the question we were posed to this were best cards for standard and worst cards for standard in the context of how good they were for the format.
Mm-hmm.
So how on earth did this end up on here? Who put this on their list? This card is a nightmare. So it was coming off the back of, I'm playing Gruul at the moment. It was coming off the back of overpowered 3-drops. So you had Gruul Spellbreaker. So it's 3 mana for a 3/3 haste or a 4/4 if it doesn't have haste. And then it had a weird extra ability. It wasn't quite good.
Give you hexproof
on your. This is nuts. Right, so we ignore the adventure side of it. This is the problem with adventure cards. 3 mana for a 4/3, which then punishes you if you remove it. It's insane. If you just ignore the other part of this card, it'd still be seen play. But then it's also got, so the removal's not great. At least it wasn't shock, but it's 1 more mana than a shock. But it's not 1 more mana than a shock because it's attached to this really good creature. It still also is prevents damage prevention. Oh my god.
And that was relevant as well. People overlooked that, but when Simic Nexus was around, if you red deck, you're please be a Bone Crusher Giant. I don't even care about the 4/3, but it's a Stomp. Ooh.
Always surprisingly relevant. They were Wild Slash and Gideon. You'd block a Gideon and then just Wild Slash another random creature. Gideon loses all his loyalty because I've blocked it with a 7/7. They'd be like, what? Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand.
Right, before we let Harry go, do you want to say? Because I think every workplace I've in the last 2 years is probably cast more Bone Crusher Giants than they can count. Because if you played standard, that's just sort of the price of playing now. But I'm sure Ryan's got some opinions because he played a liturgy of different Bone Crusher decks.
Yeah, it's as Tom said, it's essentially shock with a body, and it's. And as you said, obviously obviously don't want to go into it, but again with adventure, obviously you're getting, obviously the thing about it is the adventure is cheaper than the creature on this one, so then it's the tempo as well, so you can then on the end step, obviously on your opponent's end step you can do either kill a creature or 2 to the face, and then on your turn lay a 3rd land, play the 4/3. So it's a really good tempo because again, with the adventure being cheaper than the creature, and again you can just go turn 2 and then into 3. But yeah, it's just insane. As I said, it's shock with the body because you shock something, and then when you try to remove it, it shocks you. So it's kind of all right. So I've just got the value of it anyway, even if we were removing it. And yeah, and it's above curve because it's a 4/3, so it trades up. It could block and trade with a Questing Beast. one of the other things as well.
It's a 4/3 with text on it.
Yeah, 4/3 with text on it as well. Yeah, that's true. And as you said, Isaac, like the preventing damage as well, just tagged onto it randomly for no reason. Like that became relevant.
Does that get around protection? It does, doesn't it? Oh no, you can't target.
No,
it's damage can't prevent his turn. So if you have something that's pro-red and I block it with the Bone Crusher Giant, another Bone Crusher Giant I have down, I can stomp another random 2-drop. And protection longer prevents my damage. Yeah.
But you can't block it in the first place though. But yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, it does strange things.
The way around.
Yeah.
The other way around. If you swung in and then block it with a crit.
It was a deployed Bone Crusher Giant.
Yes. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
It is foolish. I'll let Harry go next. I have a good parting statement on this, which will be quite controversial, but I'll let Harry go next.
I just want to sort of continue Ryan's point that like this is so essentially you get 8 cards on 4, and it's a 2-drop, 3-drop, and a 5-drop. Which is like
so 5 mana,
and they're all good rate.
They're all good rate. They're all insane rate, bro. They're all foolish.
They're not bad. Like if you play 2 mana face, 2 mana any target on turn 2, that's fine. If you play Bone Crusher Giant on turn 3 without playing the adventure, it's fine. If you've played the adventure as well, I mean, you're laughing. And then if it's turn 5 and you play both sides of the spell, I mean, you're sitting pretty. If especially if you're like, if you are an aggro deck, or even if you're a mid-range deck, like anywhere around that, and you're getting this kind of value, and essentially what you end up with is a 4/3 that deals 2 at face when it gets targeted. It's just, I mean, this card's ridiculous. Like, it's incredibly powerful. Like, I'm surprised that it's on this list.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's good for the format because of the fact of like it being an auto include in anything that's red. I also don't think it's good for the format in the way that it sort of nullifies a lot of 2-drops because
you can't play it.
You can't. Yeah,
if you get stomped, you've lost the game.
More so 3-drops as well. Anything that's 3 mana and has 2 toughness, terrible for the format because let's remove the opportunity cost of people running removal. Like it just makes deck building less necessary, and then it just hoses everything that has 2 or less toughness because you can't play your Lotus. This is why Lotus Cobra isn't doing as well as it should be doing.
Which off that is why I might have placed it 10, partially.
Because you can't play any enabler that, no matter how good it is, if it has 2 toughness, because I get to kill it for free.
Yeah, it's a real problem, to be honest. Like, I mean, this card is here, and I have had some good times with this card. Like you can get ahead really easily, and you can abuse your opponent with it if they don't know what it is or how it works. So in that respect, like I've enjoyed the card, but do I think it's good for the format? Not so much. So
yeah, what I'll sort of say to wrap it up, before I go do my little tirade, can I just if you give me the distribution data, that would be great.
Okay, so Bone Crusher Giant got 18 points and it only appeared 3 times, so as you can imagine, it got given 6 points by each person who put it on.
So I think, I'm not sure, one of those were me, and I think the argument that I'm going to put forward, and this is an interesting one, and I do believe this genuinely. I think Bone Crusher Giant is a card that good players are happy exists, right? I don't think I'm good enough to say that I milks all the value out of Bone Crusher Giant, but the game that happens when you have 2-drops and you're playing an aggressive deck, and do you develop your board because we've got 2 mana up, or do you not? Are they representing it? Are they not? I think there's a lot of things that happen. Like, I think Bone Crusher Giant's not good for a format, but it is good for gameplay, if that makes any sense at all. I think the way that people play around it, play into it, is very interesting. What I will say is, Reddit is going to hate me here because I'm going to make a lot of comparisons here, and I want a lot of card images up, so just bear with me. When I started playing the game, people used to complain about Flame Tongue Kavu, right? this creature that when it entered, it would deal 4 to any creature, right? And basically what people said was, if you play an FTK and they have an FTK and they kill your, like, the tempo swing it generates when the body's good enough for it is ridiculous, right? No one would dare cast a Flametongue Cavu now, but people are casting Bone Crush Giants. It's the exact same thing. And you see things like this with the other adventure cards. Like, if you compare Lovestruck Beast to Siege Rhino, and the reasons people hated Siege Rhino is all the same reasons people hate Lovestruck Beast. They said Lovestruck Beast is a 2-for-1. Siege Rhino kind of is, but it's a 2-for-1 that you can cast over 2 turns, better tempo, and it invalidates everything that attacks early, basically. So I think if you look at Siege Rhino, Lovestruck Beast, Flametongue Cavu, and Bone Crush Giant, it's things that are undercosted, very free to play, and invalidate a lot of the turns. So ultimately, and if you look at those cards, people complained way too much about Siege Rhino, and I wasn't around for Flametongue Cavu, so I don't know how bad it was, but I'm assuming now, looking at it, people probably complained a little bit too much about it. I'm probably going to get some boomers hating me, but ultimately, Bone Crusher is not great for a format, but I found it very fun to play with and against. That's all I'll say.
You made a good point. So your point is that it makes gameplay better because you've got to play around this sort of efficient removal.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is this is a bad way to do it. Like, that's
I agree. I agree.
But this is the most ham-fisted sort of like wrecking ball way to get cheap effective removal in.
After all the bans, when people are playing Bone Crush, that's the kind of magic I like. I like the magic where if you make a mistake, right? Like if you're both aggressive slanted mid-range decks, right? Where we're sort of attrition-y, and if you make a mistake, I just output you in a tempo black hole, and now I'm outpacing you. I love that kind of magic. Like, I love the Thief Sanity, Night of Precinct 1s, that sort of magic. Like, I really love that. So even though it's ham-fisted, it kind of brought games out that I like to play. So that's probably why I put it in. Even though it's horrendous for the format, I will give you that.
All right. So, yeah, just to clarify on Bone Crusher, 18 points, 3 appearances, so 6 points on average. And at rank number 6, we have, I'm going to butcher the name. No, I've got it. Right, Croxer, Titan of Death's Hunger. I think that's right.
You got it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, so Croxer, so he's 2 mana, so he's red and black. Legendary creature, Elder Giant. When Croxer enters the battlefield, sacrifice unless it escapes. When Croxer enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life, and he escapes for double black and double red. And escape is the mechanic. If the card's in your graveyard, you can pay the escape cost, and you bring it from the graveyard to the battlefield. And as part of the escape cost is always you exile cards from your graveyard, and Croxer's is you exile 5 of the cards from your graveyard.
And it's red, black, right?
Red, black,
escape cost.
I think Ryan's the best place to start here. I think
because I played it. Well, my opening argument for it is that it's not Uro, so I think I'll leave it at that. It's not Uro.
Yeah, but I can make an argument for Fry's invention using that argument, so it's probably the weakest argument I've heard ever.
I'm only kidding. Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
No, because the thing is, it's a 2-drop, so it's kind of like So it's a 2-drop, which kind of like, not duress, but kind of like it makes your opponent discard, but it's choice. So it can be like a good early, like especially if your opponent's muddled down, you can then you're forcing them to discard a card, and then they know that it's coming later on for Croc, so that you know that you're probably not going to get it turn 4, but usually turn 5 you can probably get it in the right deck. And again, when it enters, obviously it does the same effect again, and then when it attacks, obviously you get the effect. But the thing about with Crocs is that you can choose the card. That's the thing. Like, you can choose the card. So if you want to negate losing the 3 life, you discard a non-land card. But if you got loads of land, then you can ditch it and then lose 3 life if you don't want to discard the non-land card. It is annoying, especially in the format with like claim the firstborn, because you can bring it back and then claim it and then attack straight away. And then on the flip side, if it gets nicked as well, you're like, oh, I'm in trouble here now. But I'm surprised it did made the list really, because really it's just, as I said, it's just the other side of Euro really, because it's in that same thing. I know it's not as obnoxious as Euro, but it is in its own category. because it does the opposite, where it instead of giving you cards, it takes away cards from your opponent. But probably because it's not as bad as Euro, that's people why it's made the list, just because it's not being Euro.
Yeah, I don't.
It's something to say, really.
Yeah.
So.
I don't have a strong opinion on this because I haven't cast this card very much. But what I will say is I think that it enables a lot of archetypes that wouldn't exist otherwise, and those archetypes aren't necessarily too good. I think with Euro, you saw everything become an Euro deck. You're not seeing everything become a Crocs deck. Like, there is a cost to putting that in your deck. Like, with Euro, because drawing cards and gaining life is generically good, then everyone plays it, right? But discard, making your opponent discard and make them lose is not generically good. That's very contextual on what you're playing, how you're playing, how you're going to raise all the value out of Crocs to make it repeatable, things like that. So I think personally, I don't think I put it on my list. Just the escape over and over and over again is quite irritating. But ultimately, like, I think it enables things that you kind of want to be enabled, and it doesn't homogenize much either.
The difference with Euro is Euro feeds into being splashed because it's draw a card, put a land into play. It ramps you, so it's easier to, any deck with blue in or any deck with green in quickly becomes an Euro deck, because adding the extra colour to an Euro makes it easier to add the extra colour. Yeah, I were gonna kick off, but I don't think it's that bad, really. I mean, I didn't put it on my list, but I guess the big difference with it is the front half of it. So when you just cast it as a spell, like, you wouldn't play it, would you?
No.
Unlike Euro, which is Growth Spiral with upside, you would play. Red, black, target player discards a card. If they discard a non-land card, they lose 3 life unless they discard a non-land card. Like, you're not playing that, really, are you?
It's crap. It's objectively a bad Magic card, that side.
So,
I think the other thing about Croxer is the thing that makes it good is also the thing that sort of offsets it a little bit, so it drops its power level. Just the fact that escape exists means that your opponent can discard an escape card off of the trigger, and you've both sort of, you've not leveled out, but you can play into this.
Yeah, your opponent's not lost that much.
Yeah, it's not like a huge issue. I think there are a couple of like other points that we need to highlight with Croxer, stuff like the interactions with like War Strider, Village Rites, and especially Witch's Oven. So when Witch's Oven was hot and Cat was still in the format, like if you turn 1 a Witch's Oven and then you play a Croxer, you're getting, if you do it right, if you time it right, I mean, and you should know how to do this. Like,
you press Control on your keyboard first, and then
press Control or any other number of buttons that give you full control.
Not like first. Just by Arena, most people just have it on all the time anyway, don't they?
Well, yeah, exactly. People just auto-play it. But yeah, you're coming out with 2 food, and it's not really changed anything. So I think the interactions with like Witch's Oven and the deck that sort of plagued the format. Well, not the deck, the archetype made it a little better than it actually is. Like when you evaluate this card, I think this card's shit. I think we should all just accept it. This card sucks. Like, it has been since I played the game. Drawing cards seems to be much more powerful.
What I will say is that it is. So I agree with you in the abstract. In standard, this card is okay, right? But when you compare it to Euro, it's shit, right? The card is shit. But when you look at Eternal formats that have Euro banned, it's far more powerful. So like Jude will tell you, in Jund, Crocs is one of the best things that happened to that archetype in forever because it's made it unfair, right? And it's the same in Historic and in Pioneer and stuff. I think there where you churn it out and you build your deck around it and you power it out, really good. In Standard, it is kind of buns. Like it's just like it creates archetypes that want to fuel it, but you have to play a lot of dead, awful, terrible cards like Maya Triton to make that happen. But ultimately, I do agree with the sentiment. Like, yeah, it's fairly shit.
If you want to play like Croxer from your graveyard on turn 4, you have to commit and play some
Shitters.
Crap cards.
In standard,
to get
in modern, it's free.
Yeah,
okay. Like, I mean, obviously, this is my sort of
and it's a standard
inexperience showing.
List,
But like in terms of standard, like this card's been bad for a long time, especially non-targeted. So I don't get to choose, you get to choose.
Yeah.
And that which sort of centers around the point that I was making of escape, sort of making this card good, but also making it worse. Like, I don't know, Croxer for me, I think it was a relatively good design, just didn't hit the mark of what it wanted to do. But yeah, it's a cool card. I like to see Rakdos doing stuff that's like new and not just the standard stuff.
Sack things.
Yeah. But I think we've. Has anyone got anything else to say on Croxer? Are we all good?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we're at number 5.
What was the Croxer appearance there, mate?
Oh yeah, sorry. So Croxer points only appeared twice. And it got total points of 18.
2 people.
So 2 people liked this card, which is a quarter of the sample, and they both gave it like rank 2 essentially.
Yeah.
Which
Surprised it made it.
So well, the thing is, because there were so many unique cards in this, there's gonna be some sort of cards that a few people really liked that are gonna leapfrog. Which is a flaw in this system, but it's also a flaw in the fact that the sample size is so small. So
yeah, that's true.
I mean, hopefully,
apparently, I surveyed some idiots as well. Yeah.
All right. So at number 5, we have Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, Scavenging Ooze. So it's definitely modern for quite a while, isn't it? So...
Oh, I'd shotgun first.
yeah, that's I'm bringing them up. So Scavenging Ooze. Let's get the right one. Yeah, so Scavenging Ooze. So it's 2 mana, red and 1 generic, printed in Core 21.
Green and 1 generic. Green and 1 generic.
Green and 1 generic.
Yeah.
You're thinking of Planet Chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, so green and 1. Yeah, creature type Ooze of all things, and then he has an ability. So for 1 green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put 1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain 1 life. And he's a 2/2. Yeah, over to you, Isaac.
Right, so I'm going to give a bit of backstory on me, right? I started playing Magic in Core Set 2014, right? That was the first set I sort of played. A lot of reprints in that set, right? Like Elixir of Immortality, stuff like that. 2 big ones, right? 2 huge ones. Mutavault in standard, right? Probably a bad idea, but if you open a Mutavault in an M14 pack, you made 35 quid, you were buzzing. I did that. It were amazing, right? Other card, first time it was printed outside of the Commander pre-constructed products, right? At this time, it was already a legacy staple, right? Scavenging Ooze in Magic 2014, right? It was printed. Immediate modern powerhouse. Standard All-Star, right? All are an amazing card, right? And then Core Sets got terrible for a while. And then M21 came out, and it was back to M14 days, where we got big reprints, right? Containment Priest, Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze to me, especially with things like Escape in the format, but in general, Scavenging Ooze should be an evergreen standard card, right? Because it always is there to punish. It's not broken, you can answer it, but it's always there to punish the degenerate things. It's sort of old reliable. I love Scavenging Ooze. I can't tell you how much I love it. I think when it was spoiled, I said it was going to be one of the more impactful cards in the whole of the core set, and I think I was mostly right. I think if you looked at the numbers on that set, just a hunch, it would probably up there with some of the most played, like alongside Cultivate and Ugin and things like that. But that card, man, it is such an absolute work of art when it comes to design, because it scales up with the power level of the format. Like, the more degenerate graveyards get, the better this card is. So yeah, I just love Scavenging Ooze, man. Absolutely love it.
I think graveyard play, like the power level of graveyard play as well, seems to be indicative of how the power level of the format. So I think what you've said there about Scavenging Ooze sort of leveling up as the format gets better is pretty bang on. Like, Scavenging Ooze is frustrating to play against as an aggro player. Like, you see this 2-drop and it's like, if I don't handle this now, it's going to get out of control regardless of what I do. And it's going to gain them life and stop me from using my graveyard at all. So it's an offensive threat, it's a defensive threat, and it gains me life. Like, I think for a 2-drop, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
The only saving grace I would say for it in terms of like, when I say saving grace, I mean the only thing that sort of drops it off a little bit is that it's hard into green. Like, you want to be in green significantly. Like, it's much better in mono green than it is in anything else. So that sort of makes me a little more accepting of the card in general. I think it's good that it was printed when it was printed, because it allowed for some counterplay to a lot of the graveyard shit that we were essentially seeing dominate the format and be pretty much unbeatable for a long time. Yeah, I don't know. Scavenging News, I'm fine with it. I've gotten over it. When I first saw it, I was like, fuck's sake.
I think that's a lot of people's first reaction, but I think ultimately, just like how we were saying, we want better 1-drops in general. I think having Scavenge News in the format, having a good mid-range early threat is always a good thing. And I think if you play Scavenging News, you do quickly recognise that there's some matchups where it's just awful. Like, you don't want it at all. You'd rather have any other 2-drop. But personally, I think there should be threats where if you're an aggro deck and you have access to Bone Crusher Giant, if I play a Scavenging News and you don't kill it, then I do deserve to automatically win, because you've probably kept something horrendously loose if you can't beat a Scavenging News. So I'm like I said, I'm very biased, but I'll let Ryan go.
Yeah, no, just like as what Harry said, like it just seemed fair, like it is a fair. And also the thing about it is that, like, usually what Wizards do, like, they introduce something and then don't introduce hate for it. Because we had this before back in Innistrad with Delirium, like, there wasn't really any good graveyard hate, and then with Amonkhet they did print graveyard hate, but it was kind of like a bit too good. So this kind of like is good, but it's not overpowered. And as you say, because you do have to invest into it, because it's green in 1 for a 2-drop, and also it's green to activate it. And the other thing to note with it is that it's any graveyard, so you can pick your own. So again, if your opponent doesn't have anything, you can then pick stuff out of your own to grow it. So it just gives you that flexibility. But it's kind of like a saving grace of it. And the other thing is that it is a 2-drop. So, and you can easily answer it now with stuff in the format like Blood Chiefs First, Illuminate. Heartless that to a degree, but obviously as soon as you get one counter, obviously that card becomes worthless. But there are really good answers to it, and like, it can get out of hand, but it can easily be answered. But again, I think it's just a really good 2-drop. And just to say, like, when I saw it got spoiled in Core 21, I was surprised, but I was kind of happy, especially with Feros and obviously with Aurora making, obviously being in the format. It's kind of like seemed like an answer to it. Obviously, Wizards did print graveyard answers into Theros itself with the scythe. I think I forgot what it is, the 1-drop, the 1 artifact. And then also in 21 they also printed Torment's Crypt as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they did like introduce some more stuff into it.
Ghost something land and Ghostlight Land.
Ghostlight Land.
There we go. And Cling to Dust and stuff like that. Yeah, Skoos is very, 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 very powerful, but very, very reasonable. Like you said, it's not. It could have very easily been too good. Like if it hadn't existed and they printed it in Eldraine, it'd have been like a 2/4. It'd have been colourless to activate its ability, But yeah, it's very sort of reasonable.
It'd have also had 1 mana fetch a land put on the battlefield attached to the front of it.
No, if it ate a land, you'd add a mana to your pool.
Yeah, let's not go down this hypothetical rabbit hole. I think in general, what I want to see moving forwards personally is, I think Magic's got 20, 30,000 cards that exist, right? And we have this breadth of cards, and ultimately, if we print Scavenging Ooze into the dirt so that it becomes a bulk rare like it kind of is now, right? Just to get it in standard and keep it in standard, let's do it. Like, I think personally, adding things like Cultivate to standard, whilst it's doing silly things with other cards, right? Having a Cultivate available and having a Scavenging Ooze available and having Containment Priest and having, even to a lesser extent, Ugin. I know it's controversial, but I like having something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we go into the past and we take these cards and we put them in standard, I think it's perfect. Like, this is the perfect poster boy for why we need to reprint more and maybe design less. I know that's probably unpopular take, but it's sort of like, if you go to watch a band, right, you want to see their greatest hits. Like, you don't want to see them play all the new stuff. Like, you want to see some of their best stuff. So let's put Scavenging Ooze in the format, because that's some of your best stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, especially for newer players, it makes it easier if these cards are like not they don't even have to be evergreen, but common. Like they're not like out of the format for years and years and years. Like I'd heard people speak about Scavenger News previously, but I'm like, who cares? It's irrelevant. I don't play that format. Like, and then. If the thing is, if I had have known what that card was when it came into printing, I would have been much more prepared for it and understood it. So like, if things like Shock and like Elvish Mystic come back, I know what they do. I know their power level, and it's relative to the sort of microcosm that they're in at any one point, right? And I think for all of us, like going forward, it would be a good idea to limit design maybe a little bit, because there are some cards that have been proven to be good and should be continued to like see play in standard. Like I don't think there's a problem with that. I think it'd overall be good for everybody, because then you've got less lingo that's sort of dead and buried. Like, oh, you've got us talking about cards from 5 years ago.
So you converted mana cost and not mana value, things like that. We're just old men now.
Exactly. So I think if you sort of lower that, then it also lowers the barrier for entry.
Yeah, it makes
for
it more
new players.
Yeah.
It makes it more inclusive, and it makes it's just easier to be part of the community, I think. So maybe that's like a wider point about the card and the design choices. But like, I think Scavenger News highlights that pretty well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Do you want to give the data on that?
Yeah. So it got 18 points overall. It appeared 3 times, so six again. 6 as an average. But yeah, we'll go to rank number 4 and Question Beast.
Question Beast.
Oh, have fun with this one, Ryan. Have fun with this one.
I'll have to look at it because it'll probably have more text on it.
More lines keep appearing. Every time you look at it, there's a new line.
Have a drink.
Full on paragraph.
Right, let's start.
2,000 word essay.
I'll put my feet up for a second.
Probably the easiest thing to do is like just to say what Question Beast doesn't have. Like what doesn't it do? That might be a shorter thing. Right, so Question Beast. So he's 4 mana, so he's double green and 2, a legendary creature beast. So he's got vigilance, death touch, and haste. And Question Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. But it doesn't stop there. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And then it's got one other thing as well. So it doesn't stop there. Whenever Question Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. And he's a 4/4.
Just to quickly interject, I had actually, not even a joke, forgotten about the damage can't be prevented thing.
Yeah,
like,
I'll let Tom.
one of the decks I'm playing in standard, I am currently playing. Oh, this is just a nightmare. Like, just calm down. Just stop printing cards. This is Avacyn and Silver Advocate all over again. It just... And why is it green? So much of the stuff it does isn't green. Like, this could be... So I always say this to people. People say, how do you fix white? This is what white creatures should look like. Maybe not with the body. It's a green creature. Should just be big and dumb. Like, the 4-mana green creature should be like a 5/5 but not do much else. It should be the white creatures that are complicated, like First Strike, Vigilance, extra abilities and stuff like that. That's how you should make white things unique, because the point is, like, white is civilized, people are like trained and they have technology to an extent, you know what I mean, like, you know, equipment, but not equipment cards. But yeah, just like this could have easily been Mardu as well, and it'd have still made perfect sense. Or like, oh yeah, white for vigilance, red for haste, black for death touch. Oh, and then this can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. If it's if it's an evergreen keyword, give it a keyword. So like, they've been printing these cards for years now. Just give it a name.
Just to clarify your position, you don't think it should be on the list?
No. Oh, I don't think
I think I agree with you personally. Right? I I think if you're going to play a 4-mana creature, you should get a good rate out of it, right? Because if you're going to, especially, so haste is one of the things that I say needs to be on a creature in Magic in 2020 to, or 2021 rather, for it to be playable, right? It has to say enter the battlefield, it has to say cast, it has to say haste, it just has to have immediate value, right? But I think personally, if your Questing Beast gets removed for 2 mana, that is punish mechanic. If it doesn't, the game becomes a hellscape. But like, plain and simple. But yeah.
Not to mention it exists with Embercleave as well. Like the poor people you see who block a Questing Beast with Embercleave, and it's like, no mate, it's not gonna matter. Like,
I mean, this card is it's a fucking nightmare. Yeah, Tom, like you put it right. It's an absolute nightmare. Like I don't really know how to justify it in any way. Like it's single colored, like you said, it could be in Mardu, it could be in Abzan, it could be in like pretty much any color combo that's not mono green, and it'd probably make more sense if it had another like color attached to it. But so first of all, when it first came out, people had to sort of adapt to this card. It was like, okay, what the fuck does it do? We have to learn everything that it does first, because you have to be prepared for it. Like just reading it when it comes down onto the battlefield is not good enough. Like you can't play reactively to this card because it will just bury you. Like you will die, and that made it unfun for a little while. The thing that it does with the Planeswalkers is madness. I don't understand that. Like
I like that. I like that.
Why?
Right.
Go on.
So I'll pitch this. Right. I think Tom will agree with me, and Ryan will probably agree with me. Right. If it was a 4/4 with haste and trample with that ability, I would love this card and I would have it on my list higher up. Right. 100%. Me, Tom, and Ryan lived through the era. And it's not as much now. It was like, but where Planeswalkers were by far the most dominant card type, and nothing could touch them, right? So I'm talking like Gideon Allies Zendikar, which, mate, if I had Questing Beast and people are casting that card, it's like, oh, nice 2/2s, mate, dead. You're dead, he's dead, you're dead, done. Chandra Torture Defiance, things like Nahiri from Innistrad, which now is not a good card, but we have to all remember that card was foolish. Same with like 6-mana Sorin, like all these massive board threats, right? In general, what we complained about at that point is why nothing kills Planeswalkers, and Planeswalkers stop themselves from dying, right? All of them do. Questing Beast, when I had that text, I'm like, right, good. That is one design direction I'm okay with, right? I'm okay with punishing Planeswalkers more. The issue is, why does it say everything else? And I think the reason why people look on it fondly, right, is because there was bigger fish to fry, right? So if Questing Beasts were around, going Gideon Allies and the Cower around, it would have been the dominant threat. Everyone would have been complaining, right? I think everyone can agree with that. But in the context of what happened, I think people go, oh, Questing Beast, that's fair magic. And it's like, you've played Magic for about 18 months, pal. That's not fair magic. Do you know what I mean? But do you guys agree with that sort of general statement? Like, of all the abilities, that Planeswalker one is one that I would like to see implemented.
Yeah. It definitely seems like too much with everything else. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know, yeah, I guess because it was sort of around the time when there was static ability Planeswalkers as well, so It was nice to have the extra punishment. But yeah, it's a daft ability though, because you're supposed to have to choose. That's the point.
But that's why Planeswalkers are too good. So personally, it's like a menace for Planeswalkers, right? Kind of. If it was a keyword ability on some creatures where it sort of had it tacked on, I'd be okay with that. Like if it had double strike, but for Planeswalkers, I'd be okay with that then. Personally, I think not too much, but if for a year, do you know what I mean? We just did that to make Planeswalkers slightly worse in general. Fine with me. That's just probably a preference of mine. But yeah, I don't know. I won't keep going. But that's my favourite text on that card, and I keep forgetting that it's there because oftentimes it's
amazing. In paper, you can just lie to people. Like, oh, Heartless at your question me, so I just got hexproof. They don't have time to read it.
It's Portuguese, mate. Good luck. That's my Portuguese question. Oh, you don't read Portuguese? Oh, sorry, mate.
They don't have time to check. Oh, yeah, probably doesn't have hexproof, did it? Oh, whoops. Like, oh, I forgot about that.
I think, and just like the thing like you said, like I think it's the only card in Arena where they still playing after your past turn. Like it's still going your opponent's turn. Like you just like 2-3 massive heads. You like, and your opponent's like, what? Like they've just been hit for 4. They've still got 3 heads looking at them. Like what?
Okay, let's have a quick question. Is it a ferret? It looks like a big ferret, right? And you're the expert.
I don't know. I'll have to get one up. Just a minute.
Okay. Well, ferret or
plus
not.
as well. Sorry, onto more superfluous things as well. Like it's a legend without a name as well. I didn't think that were a thing.
Yeah, because it's taken from Arthurian legend, isn't it? Because it was the questing beast was a beast that they went off to kill because it was the actual thing that they were going to get. It was a beast that they were after, so it was called a questing beast because it was part of a quest to go and kill the beast. But it didn't have a name. It was just called the questing beast. So
its neck's a bit long for it to be a ferret. I'm sorry.
But its face
just a
is
fucking
ferret,
hydra.
right? Its face is ferret. It's like a ferret.
I mean,
yeah.
a bit.
Okay, anyway, terrible magic card, right? Shouldn't be on the list. I didn't put it on my list, right? I don't think anyone in this call put it on their list, so we'll move on from there.
Just to clarify, right? This got 20 points. The entire stack has been very close. If you've been listening to the total points I've been saying, it's like we've gone from 15 to 20 right now, and we're about to break into the top 3. It appeared twice. 2 people put it at 1. So there are 2 people that think of this card incredibly fondly, and they think it was the best card of this entire format. I strongly disagree because it's. I mean, this is throwing pasta at a wall until it sticks.
I'm not going to shame those people publicly, right? But next time you answer, right, I'm going to throw some names out there because that is appalling, man. That is poor form.
Just stop giving green creatures haste as well. Why is haste green? Why is everything just green?
I was going to highlight this. So it's something that's really getting my goat recently, right? We see these 4 mana.
You're going to abuse someone now. Go on.
No, I'm not going to abuse anyone, right? We see these 4 mana dragons, 5 mana dragons without haste, right? In red, double red, and then we see these cards that are coming out of green that are just randomly given haste. And it's like, they don't need it, first of all, because they're already achieving what they want to achieve by being big and dumb and blocking. And then they've probably got trample. In this case, it doesn't, but it has vigilance. So
you could light them and tell them it does have trample in it.
I mean, you could light them, but like the point that I'm trying to make is they're putting this keyword on the wrong cards, and it seems to me that they've just forgotten where, like, the impact of haste is hugely impactful. It changes the format entirely in Constructed based on where you have haste, because it creates break points, and they need to sort of put more thought into when they put this keyword on things, because it really matters.
Yeah, I totally agree. You got any closing comments, Ryan?
Yeah, well, I think just to reiterate what Isaac said, I think people rated this highly because it killed Planeswalkers. I think really it's people hating Planeswalkers. I think that's pushed it. But also, I think the other reason why it just didn't have a draw a card on it was saving the Gargoth. They tagged all the other shit with tag Elder Gargoth as well, so it's kind of all right. But probably also because they ran out of space in the text as well. They ran out of space.
Yeah, they want enough space. So. I think we're good to move on to the top 3 here, and I think we'll all be relatively pleased with the top 3.
Hopefully,
I think. So at number 3, we have Castle Locthwain.
Castle Locthwain, and I think that's it's our only land list, isn't it, as well?
Don't think so.
Oh no, maybe not. I'll retract that statement.
You have to listen to the end of the podcast.
Yeah, hanging. There might be another one, but there might not be as well.
You don't know, okay?
Suspense, man. Keep watching.
Yeah, so Castle Locthwain, so it's from Eldraine. It's just land, no type or anything. So Castle Locthwain enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp. And you can tap it to add a black. And it also has another ability where it's 1 and 2 black, tap it, draw a card, then you lose life equals the number of cards in your hand. So things to note with this one, that it doesn't have a type, so it's not a swamp itself or any other, it's just a land. So it doesn't trigger anything with, or turn things on that triggers with swamps and stuff, or also does other things like check lands and stuff like that. And so that's the thing to note with here, like it doesn't have a type. But also it's kind of like similar with Midnight Reaper, where it's card advantage for black, but it loses your life. So that fits again, keeping with the theme of black. And also it's 4 mana as well, overall, really, because you need to tap that land as well and also have the 3 mana as well. So it's kind of like 4 lands really in a sense. And it's and usually going to use this late game, because using this early game is going to hurt. Like if you use it with 5 cards in hand, you're going to lose 6 life when you draw that 6 cards. So it can be like a double-edged sword really in a sense, because you don't really want to use it early, but you want to try and keep up card advantage if obviously that's the way it's going. But no, I really rate it. I really find it good. It's not a 4 of in a deck. It's usually about probably like a 2, maybe 3.
Unless you're in mono black, then
unless you're in mono black, I suppose.
But even then, that's not because you want multiples of them. That's just because you might as well, because you want
it's
one.
free. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that if you draw multiples of them, it's the cards are going to enter taps because they don't have each other on, because they're not swamps, they're just lands. So if you've got 2 Castle Lockwinds, you know what I mean, handy kind of like both my 2 lands are going to enter taps, which is what you don't want really, especially if you're an aggro deck, because you want to obviously commit to the board, actually play stuff. But no, I really rate it. Again, it fits in the thing black, where it's card advantage but at the expense of life. And and to make a note with all the castle, like for all the castles from Eldraine, I think they were decent. I think they're all good for what they are and what they do. But yeah, over to the next person.
I think that I remember the visceral reaction when I saw the castle cycle Eldraine, right? I don't know. I think it was spoiled fairly early, right? And I think I remember saying, "Oh wow, these are broken. Like, look at them." In a standard context, without powerful cards, these would be pillars of the format. Like everyone would be playing 1 or 2 color decks to gain access to these free sources of card advantage, right? So just to think that now this is sort of the new normal is very interesting. Castle Lockwood's one of my favourites. I think I placed it in my top 3. I think you have to build your deck in a specific way to utilise it, and that's oftentimes the kind of cards I like. I think solving the puzzle of how do I maximise this card in my deck? What's the optimal number to play? Do I even play it? That's an even interesting question, because the duality of it is you want to play an aggressive deck to empty your hand, but then the aggressive deck does not want a tap plan, and it doesn't want to spend in 4 mana to draw a card. But on the other hand, if you get their life total low enough, you don't care about your life total, and you've sort of run out of gas a bit, it can win you those games. So it's very interesting, because it's very, very good when you're behind. And even when you're behind, it can swing some of those games. But when you're ahead, if you ever draw multiples or whatever, it can be a bit clunky. So, it sort of goes in a deck that wants to be ahead, but it's at its best when you're not ahead. Like, I think it's a very interesting card. I think it's very skill testing as well. It lets you leave your mana open. You commit just enough to the board into the sweeper to get them to sweep, and then you can just leave your mana open and take 5 to draw a card, and you don't really care because you're playing against a sweeper deck. Yeah, I love the card, man. It's great.
Yeah, all the castles really, really good, and this is probably the best, which is why it shows up. Like really well designed cards, nice effects, and then opportunity cost that scales with the number of colours you're playing, which is just great. It's really what you want to be, because obviously nowadays playing 1 colour is generally just worse than playing 2, and then that's worse than playing 3, and then if you're really cheeky, you're on 4. But because of how it interacts with basics, you can't wait. It was a bit worse when there was shocks, but you can't do that. You really want to be using the castles. You're 2 colours max. Better at 1, and it's just really, really nice for a leg up for that sort of strategy.
Yeah, totally.
I love anything that punishes you for playing 4 colours, because it's like...
I will say the castles are part of the reason why, castles are mutable, and lands like that are part of the reason why in Pioneer for a while monocoloured decks dominated. And whilst it's not relevant to the list, I do think it sort of illustrates that point where if you want to punish these multicolored decks, then you don't want to print Blood Moon or Stone Rain, right? This is how you punish those decks, right?
Make lands good, yeah. It's like recently with Caldown with Snow. I thought that was going to be a big problem, but all that is, if you want to utilise Snow, you basically have to be monocolored.
Mm-hmm. And I love
So,
that. It means rather than discouraging multicolor, you're encouraging monocolor. And we saw that with Devotion as well. But like in the previous Star Wars, not this one, the Devotion was terrible, yeah. But in general, like incentivize me to play monocolor, and I will do.
Yeah. I think that Tom put it the best way in that, like it's opportunity cost for increasing colors, and the castle cycle in general, all of them have good abilities. I think some of them are like the shifting cost, is why this one sort of appears up top. I think a very close second that I'll give a shout out to is Embrace. Like, it does probably exactly what it should do for like a red land, a mono red land. We're not talking about something like Ramanap Ruins. We're talking about this card that does exactly what it should do for a mono archetype. It fits perfectly in what it should do, and like what you were talking about, Isaac, in that it's at its best when you're behind, but you can use it to push the issue. In black, it makes it this sort of stabilizing effect that you have to manage yourself as a player, and I like that from Castle Lockplay, and I think it's I do believe this was intended as well. Like this was actually thought out design that came to fruition in a good way. Yeah. So like full props to them for the castle cycle. Like I think they did really well with it.
I think this one in particular is very well executed. Like, you are going to continue to see this, like, as long as it's legal. Like, it might not be at its best, but there's always been 1 or 2 kicking about in Rakdos decks, etc. It's just phenomenal, man. I love this card. Like Scavenger News.
Yeah.
All right, so Castle Lockthwain got 21 points overall, and it appeared 4 times. So, like, the average is pretty low, but I think the consensus is that, well, the average is middle of the pack, but the consensus is that it's a good card and it's well designed and people like it. Okay, so at spot number 2, this is contentious, I think, but I think people tend to land on it in a similar vein. So we'll see what we have to say about it. But it's Murderous Rider.
Yep, it's Murderous Rider. So he's 3 mana, double black and 1 for a creature zombie knight from Eldraine, and he has the adventure of Swift End, which is the same cost again, which is double black and 1, which is an instant, and it has destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then you lose 2 life. And then himself, he's a 2/3 with lifelink, and when Murderous Rider dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So I think I was going to say is that essentially it's Hero's Downfall, but with a body. And I think Hero's Downfall, I'm right in saying, like, it was a staple.
It was at times it was the single best card in the format. Like, everyone was trying to play 4 copies of that card. Like, if blue-white was like, do I play Esper, a mana base horrendous, cut Mutavault to play Hero's Downfall? And then we'll get some other things as well. Like, yeah.
It is slightly worse than Downfall, isn't it? Because the value is 2 life, but it's negligible. This is basically fixed Bone Crusher Giant. Like, it's not got any of the problems Bone Crusher Giant has, because although the spell half is really good and playable, the creature half is a bit not fantastic. And like Ryan said about Bone Crusher, it doesn't have the problem where it curves into itself in any way. Like, yeah,
I think that's the key point as well.
It's just fixed Bone Crusher. Fixed Bone Crusher Giant.
Whilst it's a good rate, both sides are still like a little bit too inefficient to just ruin a format. Like, for me, right, it is just like Scavenging should be mono green, right? I'm not saying Murderous Rider should be, but a Hero's Downfall, Vraska's Contempt effect should be. The fact that this answers everything, I think this card's sort of been done dirty by its context. Like, this card, in any other context, would have been one of the best cards in its format. It would have been a Murderous Rider format. And I think whilst that's a bit sad, I think, do you know what? Like, this card is so well done because they made a mechanic that people generally don't like Adventure. And I don't think anyone disagrees that this is not just an incredible rate. And if you do, I'm more than willing to take that argument, and I will win, like, every time. There's no, like, it's just perfect drawback, perfect body for an Adventure creature. Like, every Adventure creature was sort of designed like this, even with the inherent flaws of Adventure, it would have been fine.
Yeah, I think the there's a couple of cruxes that make this card like not overpowered despite it being in the adventure family. Like it's the lose 2 life. Like that, it does put like you've got to remember that like it's part of the cost, and it does put you a bit further behind. So it's not just like that adds to it. And also the fact that it's like a 2/3, so it's not gonna aggressively trade up so much with cards that might be understated at 4 mana. So once it's on the board, it's like, okay, that's sort of an issue, but you know it's handleable.
Mm-hmm.
And these sort of, so those two things, the fact that it costs slightly more than 3 mana, the fact that the body's not great, and the fact that the two sides cost the same thing, so you can't turn one side, like it doesn't give you a turn 2 into a turn 3 or a turn 3 into a turn 4. It's just like it's either a turn 6 or it's a turn 3 into a turn 3. Like that's not.
It's not a good play pattern, is it? It's clunky.
Yeah,
like
it's clunky. Yeah. Exactly.
It was exactly what the point I was going to make, because it's really not a turn 3 play really. Using the side of it, because you're usually going to save it, because the main thing about it is that you can hit planeswalkers, and usually there isn't. Well, there was one, but obviously not here anymore. So, but obviously, he's usually done the damage like before he's sent off his merry way. But
I was going to say, because of the other side being Hero's Downfall, like you said, you're incentivized to hold on to it. Whereas like Bone Crusher, you're actively incentivized just to piss it out of your hand as fast as you can.
It was the point I was going to make, because usually going to sit because it's such a powerful, because it can kill anything, that you're not going to waste it on anything that your opponents play on the up to turn 3, unless there are some certainly exceptions.
Bone Crusher Giant.
You'll be loose 4 then.
Well, this is the thing I was just about to say, is that let's compare it to Bone Crusher, where it's like you can see the tempo of, like, if I live my third land, like I've gone first, like my opponent then stomps me, and then on their turn 3, like they play Bone Crusher, and then I Murderous Rider it, like I've just lost 6 life, and it's like, and it's kind of like, if you think of like the follow up as well, like in that scenario, like, you know, I've Bone Crusher turn 2 and stomped turn 2 and then played a Bone Crusher like turn 3. I've got a 4/3 now. Whereas like on the flip side, like say if we did that with Murderous Rider, like, oh, I've turn 3, killed the thing, lost 2 life, and then on my turn 4 I played a 2/3 with lifelink. It's kind of like, it doesn't really feel the same.
That's limited magic, that, isn't it? That's not constructed level magic, really. It's kill your guy, play a 2/3. It's a different ballgame.
Yeah, and then if you kind of like, again, comparing Bone Crusher and Murderous Rider, like it doesn't trade with Bone Crusher, so it's like, you know, if it's that against it, like, and again the thing of like it goes in the bottom of the library as well, which I can kind of see why because you can't recur it, but it's, I don't know, like there isn't really that much recurrence really from I suppose, like maybe it's a thing it's not an extra card in the graveyard for like escape and stuff, but
I think it is for the recursion, but I don't know. It's a weird safety. It's to stop me killing your creature, laying this, killing it, and then like deading it back to my hand and killing your creature again.
It was fine finality, I'm pretty sure. Because then you could just regrow 2 removal spells. Do you know what I mean? Like, like that would have been foolish.
It's probably, that's true. Yeah.
So what was he? Go on, Ryan. Finish up.
No, that was probably the reason why. No, it's just but again, even if you're recurring, like you're still losing 2 life every game. But I know it's a powerful effect, but it's, and as we said, like I think it is just well costed for what it is and well designed. Where it's, again, it's not the tempo. It's, you know, it's 3 and 3, and also you lose the life as well. Where it's, and it can be a double-edged sword. Where it's, especially if it's late game, where it's like you're low on health, but you need to remove a threat. But it's like, do I do it and lose the 2 life, or just play as a creature and stuff? And it's kind of like, so it can open up you know, play patterns and stuff like it, especially, you know, the really hard decisions, especially in the late game when you're low on life. But again, overall, I think it's just one of the like fair like adventure cards, and actually a decent adventure card, because again,
I think. Sorry, go on.
I finished. No, I finished. Right.
Yeah. So I think just to highlight something, I think maybe you guys were focusing on the wrong part of the Returns to the Library. Like, I don't think it's to do. I think the point of that card and going back to the library is so that you recycle the removal into your deck, and you, whilst it's not immediate or anything, it's going back into your deck rather than to your graveyard, because they wanted it to be played multiple times, and I do think that elevated the power level of this card quite dramatically. You saw that.
I think I disagree. I know what you're saying.
That's fine.
Yeah, go.
I know what
We're allowed to disagree on the show. That's the point.
I understand what you're getting at. I think if this card went to the graveyard, right, you would see people like me completely ruin people with this. Like, if you're playing Gruul and I'm playing Murderous Rider and some kind of regrowth effect, you're not winning. You're not beating me, because I'm just going to consistently recur this story over and over and over again. I think in decks,
but like, you're gonna
100%. You're correct, but
you're gonna keep like doing that to yourself. You're gonna keep shocking yourself, and like the threats are like it does matter. Like, we were just talking about how, like, I was talking about. Yeah. So you might not agree with this, but like, it is a cost to the card. Like, you can't just discount the fact that it costs an extra 2 life to cast the card. Like, it's not just a freebie on top of it. Like,
I agree.
So
with that.
Whilst I see what you're saying, the regrowth effects would be very powerful. I think they'd be on a similar level to this.
Okay,
it's a strange one though, because if you've not got a lot of shuffle effects in a format, like if you're not like modern and fetches, like standard, generally speaking, you're not going to shuffle your library. So bottom of your library is less accessible than any other zone you can like imagine.
All right, so just to clarify, Murderous Rider was rank 2. It had 26 overall points. It appeared 4 times, so an average of 6.5. It did relatively well with half of the sample. So I think people were pretty, happy with where it's at, and it, nobody was too upset about the card, and other people liked it. But yeah, just as a segue from the previous point about shuffling, we've got a standout winner here. Like, it's way above the other cards. It's not even close, and it is Fabled Passage at rank 1.
Yeah, so we did say earlier that there might be another land. So there might be another land.
And if you've stayed all this way listening to us, thank you very much.
Ryan is a liar.
And also the top cards are land. So Fabled Passage. So it's a land, and it has tap, sacrifice Fabled Passage, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then, if you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. And that was first printed in Eldraine, and it has been reprinted in Core 21. So first of all, it's Evolving Wilds, but it has upsides because from turn 4, from your 4th land onwards, it becomes untapped. And like Evolving Wilds, you can only go get basics. So it's again, so obviously it limits you, obviously, just to go and get basics. Again, this kind of, it doesn't fix mana bases as such, whereas like obviously you can have Evolving Wilds and Fabled Passages, but it still kind of really limits you, maybe like to 2 or 3 colours, maybe. Like, just as like kind of like the splash, like maybe like the splash colour, obviously use that to go and get it. So it's not overly, so it doesn't enable you to do those, it doesn't fix the mana for those colours, but it does allow you to, but it does in a sense, but it doesn't overly doesn't fix it for you. So again, I do rate this card because, especially now with the graveyard interactions like with Escape, it's essentially a free card because it gets you a land, and also it gets a card in the graveyard for Escape and stuff. And also like that nice ability of from the fourth land onwards being untapped is really good. And the other thing of the other interaction is that landfall as well, with what we've seen, like with Khazad Blue Mammoth, just getting double landfall triggers. Evolving Wilds has been played in that as well, but Fabled Passage is usually better because, you get the land untapped as well. And just for further effects with landfall as well, it's been, really good with that interaction, but not overly powerful. Because again, the landfall's not really seen that much play outside like a couple of cards like the Mammoth and the Gruul one. The
Brushfire Elemental.
Brushfire Elemental, yeah. But yeah, no, but overall, from my point of view, like I really rate the card. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, really good. Fixes mana in a nice sort of reasonable way. Is a fixed fetch in that it doesn't interact with dual lands, although there's not that many now. There's no ones they've put in. Interesting because its opportunity cost is based on like the curve of your deck, which is not a thing we see a lot anymore. You sort of get it with temples, but obviously if you're a really fast aggro deck, you can't be playing this because you can't afford for land to come tapped. Whereas if you're mid-range or like control, it's not a problem whatsoever. Yeah, nice sort of interactions with landfall and stuff as well. Yeah, just sort of all around. It's nice that it's a strictly better version of a common card, but it's not to a ridiculous level. It's sort of what a rare should be. It's reasonably more powerful than its common counterpart, which is just nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's not often that we see rare lands that just sort of hit the spot like this. We either see rare lands that are way too good or really underwhelming, and like it's good. I mean, we have just spoken about the castle set, and the castle set did well, but like this is for me exactly where a rare land should be. It allows you to. It does matter about the player. It's not just like this card's really good. We'll auto include it in all like 2+ colors. It's like when you play this card and when you crack it and what you fetch matters, and obviously that's variable to a degree, but it does actually reward good play as well. So I like to see that on all cards, but to put it on a land is really good. And so there's one little interaction that was weird was the whole Mayhem Devil thing. Didn't love that. That kind of caused a problem, but like that's a Mayhem Devil problem, not a Fable Passage problem. And the other sort of downside of this is the graveyard fuel thing, but I think you could also frame it in a positive light as well, because I think some of the decks that are running Fabled Passage and are able to sort of use this as graveyard fuel probably wouldn't be at the sort of efficiency or power level that they are and playability unless Fabled Passage was in the format, and I do like that.
Yeah, if you're done, so you go, you keep going. Okay, I have two main thoughts that I'll try and succinctly get across. So the first one is this card is about perfectly worded, in my opinion. I don't think you could word this much better than it's already worded. I think it's about perfect. If you tried to add any downside or any upside, it would probably be a bit too bad or too good. I think this is like exactly in the Goldilocks zone. Like this is perfect, bang on. I think you see it with Wizards a lot, where with dual lands you try and push a bit too much. Like this could have easily have been a little bit too much. Like if it was if it was your third land or higher and doesn't tap, that would probably be a bit too much. Like I think this is bang on. You saw it with Triomes, where instead of like the Karn's lands, the Tri lands were already playable, and they sort of added two things to it. Like if they just had land types or just had cycling, everyone would have been excited, but they did both. I think the Triomes are good. I don't think they're broken, but I think they're probably too good. They could have just done one of those two things. Everyone would have been excited, and they could have saved the other for a later day. I think the philosophy with Triomes is exactly the opposite of the philosophy with Fabled Passage, where they did exactly enough to make the format's mana good. Because I remember Fabled Passage was one of the last cards to be spoiled, and everyone was like, the mana in all these decks is terrible because I don't have like. I think it was like we only had enemy colored temples. So it was like, only half the mana's good. Like I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And Fabled Passage got spoiled, and immediately the possibilities were opened wide up. Like, and it was a cost. Like you couldn't play a 3-color aggressive deck, but you could play some 3-color decks if one of them was a splash, etc. So yeah, I think it was like exactly what the format needed, worded exactly at the right power level as well. And then my last point is, and this is probably the biggest one, Fabled Passage proves that if your fetch land only searches for basics, it's not a problem. If there were no fetchable lands, Polluted Delta is worse or similar power level to Fable Passage, right? It is, like, objectively. So here's an alternative. If shuffling isn't the issue with these lands, because you're giving us Evolving Wilds and you're giving Fable Passage, what's the issue, Wizards, with fetch lands? The issue is that you keep putting land types on things. That's the issue. Don't do that. All you need to do is simply give us fetch lands and basics, right? No one will make 4-color mana bases if you make aggressive decks good and you put fetch lands in a format, right? That's main of the rant, right? There is no Failed Passage is proven that there's no reason not to put fetch lands in standard and finally reduce their price. Anyone want to get in on that?
No, like you said, as long as they're not accompanied by lands, even like now, so there are dual type lands, even triple type lands, but they definitely come in tapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'd be quite reasonable.
I would just say, like, let's not even risk it. Do you know what I mean?
Just have none.
Let's just have none. Wait till they've all gone, and then just put fetches in standard basics. Because when fetches, do you remember, like, the blue black control deck I played that had, like, I think I had 6 fetches in, and I was playing Flooded Strand to just fuel Delve for dig through time, right? If there's nothing silly like that, and I get that it restricts your design space, right? But it probably restricts it in a good way. Like, it makes you purposefully not build higher power level cards with the graveyard and with mana bases, etc. So I just think, like, fetches are a good constraint to put on the format. You said previously shuffling was the issue. That's obviously a lie. Like, you can admit now that the issue is fetching things with fetch lands that make them too good. It's plain and simple. So give us bloody fetch lands, man.
Definitely a topic for another day.
Yeah.
So has everyone said everything that they wanted to say on Fable Passage, or is there anything else?
Just one other thing, like just more like just an anecdote, really. Just as what you said, like Harry, like the interaction with Mayhem Devil. But another thing that I had was I was playing Arena once, and it was an event, and I forgot which one it was, but like but I played a Fable Passage, and my opponent played a Sorcerer Spyglass, and I was like, oh, I'm wondering what they're going to choose. And then it came down, then Fable Passage, like, obviously went up on there. I was like, oh, damn. I was like, and then I drew another Fable Passage for my turn. I'm like, oh,
shit.
It's like,
I'd not even considered that interaction, to be honest.
If you don't play bottom mode, and that'll get you then. Like, people, that's my favorite. You go Piffing Needle, and you just look at them. Like this, you go Piffing Needle, and they go, oh, Resolve, and you go, Foot Strand. And they go, oh. That's exactly how they interact. I'm going to go every time.
It's making me think of another time when I was beating our mutual friend Jude, and I were running Gideon's Intervention, because it's when Hazaret were big, and it was a straight answer to Gideon's Intervention, and I were on Marder Vehicles, and he was on Temur Energy, and he was giving me a bit of a pounding, but Long Tusk come out, so I thought, all right, I'm going to have to use the Intervention anyway. I can't even remember why I boarded it in, and I named Long Tusk up to stop the one on the board doing any damage to me. It's named card, can't do damage, and they can't cast cards in that name. And then I won that game because he had 3 Long Tusk Cubs in his hand. So it was just 4 mana, destroy target creature, its controller discards 3 cards.
Brilliant.
Sweet, man.
All right, well, just to wrap this up with Fable Passage, it's got 51. So just for clarity, Murderous Rider was at 26, so he got a lot more. 25 points than its next competitor, and this is wild to me. It only appeared 6 times, so 2 people just left it out, which is very weird.
That's but the question based, isn't it?
Yeah, I honestly think there might be a direct correlation between those 2 things, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go into it any further. Yeah. So
I kind of think people may have missed the point really about it and put their favorite cards in, like.
I mean, and that's fine. Like, it was obviously subjective, and I think what this specifically highlights for us in general, like this list highlights that we need bigger sample sizes if we want to do like really good in-depth evaluation, because essentially some of the cards on here we probably don't agree with, and likely the people that play Magic and play standard probably don't agree with, unfortunately, which is fine. It just means that like a sample size of 8 isn't ideal. But yeah, Fabled Passage got 8.5 as an average score, which is really high. So it's clear that this has essentially been the best card in the format in terms of design and it, at least in our humble opinions. But yeah, I think that's everything for this episode. And it's been really, really good having Ryan and Tom here. Like, I props, you've got some great opinions, and honestly, like, some of the stuff that I've learned from you two since I started playing has been ace, and I just wanted to like give you a bit of a shout out for that.
Oh, so
Appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. I'm glad you were here.
Awesome. Right. So until next time, guys, we'll see you later.
And make sure it sound right, boys.